Okay, so the outcome. This is PowerPoint for both Year 11 research practices and Year 12 research project, and it's going to go through the assessment features of the outcome assignment, the criteria for marking, and some tips and tricks for writing. So before we begin, let's just touch base over what is the outcome. For everyone, it is the final product of the research. So it's an opportunity for you to summarize what you've learnt from your research and put that into a cohesive product. Now, for Year 11s, that will consist of about 800 words, and for Year 12s, it's about 2,000. This is excluding footnotes, bibliography, and if you are going to use the footnotes in a normal reference way, then they're not included. If you use your footnotes for additional information, that does become counted, so just be careful with how you do that. Mainly, the outcome is a clear and concise explanation of your question. So all of your writing needs to come back to your main question. You can use your focus questions to help you, but generally it is all about answering that main question. And it's going to employ reference techniques and a bibliography to explicitly detail where the research is coming from. So that might be footnotes or in-text referencing. It's your call, as long as you're consistent from the beginning to the end. It doesn't matter which system you use, but it must be the same from the beginning of your outcome to the end of your outcome, including your bibliography. In your outcome, your first goal is to establish what your key findings are. So you might have different focus questions that you now hopefully have an answer to, and you have gotten your key findings because you've looked at your research, you've found out what is the most important information for answering your question, and you've decided that you can use that to prove your answer. Once you've got your key findings, you then need to use supporting evidence to document the supporting ideas. So we don't have any ideas in a research project that are not supported. Everything is coming from a piece of evidence. So if I was going to attempt to prove that underwater knitting is the best sport for teenagers to take up, then I would need to make sure that I had my key findings. Let's say one of my key findings was that it helped improve muscle tone. And then I would need my evidence. I'd need to show one of my interviewees stating that, or I'd need to show the statistics from my surveys about people's muscle tone, or I'd need to integrate some academic reports so that they could support these ideas. You're going to use a reference system that is consistent, and each piece of evidence is going to be supported. You are marked on your ability to support your evidence. So if you miss some, you will bring your grade down. The justification of the source is the next step, though. That makes a piece much stronger. So it is very easy for me to write a sentence, whack a bit of a quote in there, and chuck a reference at the end. That's fine, and it's something that most of you will do for a while. If you really want to extend yourselves, though, you will be attempting to actually justify the use of your source. So this might look like a sentence, for example, I would say muscle tone is improved by underwater knitting. I would put a footnote at the end of that, after the full stop, and reference that to my interview with the national champion of underwater knitting. That's fine. However, to go a bit more deeply, I would possibly preface my idea or integrate in some way some discussion about why I've chosen this source to represent this point. So if I wanted to say instead, I might actually go, it was discovered in a recent interview with a Olympic underwater knitter whose 12 national titles made them a very credible source that underwater knitting helps muscular tone. And then I might put a quote from them, and then I might reference it. Now, obviously, that's going to chew up word count really quickly. You don't need to do that every single source. You don't need to do it every single sentence. But each source that you do put in, just be aware that it will be more powerful if we know why you chose that source and what makes them your more reliable or credible piece of evidence. Really importantly, you're going to have an answer to your question. Even if you don't have an answer to your question, you have an answer, because that's it. Your answer to your question is, what have you found out? Okay, so if I was trying to prove that St. Mary's is an excellent college for young women, and I was thinking, actually, it is. It's got some really good pros, but maybe there's some cons as well. Maybe particular students would be better elsewhere. Then I would have to make sure that I present both sides of my argument. This is not a persuasive, rhetoric or some sort of piece that has to be convincing just one side. It can be multifaceted, and in fact, the more complex your argument, the better you're going to do. One big point though is that it must be clear. All right, we must be able to read it, and that really means that you're going to need to make some big decisions about your presentation. If you do not like writing essays or reports, you have the opportunity here to be really creative with this. You can do an oral, you could do an Oprah Winfrey chat show, you could do a pamphlet, you could do an interpretive dance. All of those things can help you establish your key findings much more clearly, and that you can put a substantiation of your research in either a multimodal format or an oral format or a written format. It doesn't have to be all oral or all written or all video or all dance. It can be bits and pieces. So let's go through what you're going to be assessed on. Before that though, let's think about what we're going to produce. So the vast majority of St. Mary's students produce an outcome that is written. So it might be an essay, a report, a booklet, an article, a pamphlet, a document of some sort, and that's totally fine. Some people though might decide that they want to create a product. So I know of someone who wants to crochet a bear, and that person is going to crochet the bear as their product to prove that they have actually understood the information. Now, on top of that though, because the bear in itself is not going to tell me where she got her findings from, on top of that, she needs to produce a writer's statement or a substantiation. And so that will tell me why she chose to do a particular step, why she did it in the order she did, why she chose the material she did, who she spoke to get that information from, and that could be written or oral. You might put together a display or an exhibition. This is a really interesting one that you might talk to Ms. McCabe and decide that your findings on how to stay fit and healthy in Year 12 are actually really powerful if they're shared, and so you might put together a wall display. Or you might put together a multimedia presentation or a podcast or a vlog or something that actually gets it out into a more real life format. You also have the opportunity to do a performance, and this is generally for people who are putting together dance things. So we had someone this year who was choreographing a dance that was based on the integration of two different styles of contemporary dancers, Martha Graham and Sia. Sia's choreographer, Ryan, what's his face, and she actually choreographed the dance, taught it to a dance troupe, and they performed it in full costume and everything, and then she had to write her supporting evidence. Of course, there is limitless opportunity for this, so what we really encourage is that you are creative. We want to see things that play to your strengths. If you're an amazing person in terms of art, do something artistic. If you know that your strengths are actually more placed in writing, stick to the writing. You're not going to get a better mark for having done a particular style. What you are going to get a better mark for is doing something that you are strong at, that you have the skill set for, and that you are able to really commit yourself to. So, just to touch base, these are all our different types. It is really, really open. And the main thing is that in any of these, you're going to show us your findings, you're going to support it with evidence, and you're going to express the ideas clearly. So, just to really clarify, this is more for the teachers than the students. The SACE board has put together quite a lot of detailed information regarding the outcome format. And they've basically established that there's 3 types of presentation, and this really is to help guide the students, but students, if you're still listening, go for it too. So you're going to have a outcome possibly that has the key findings and the substantiation together. Now we use the word substantiation in a very particular format. We use it to detail what research you have done, where you have gotten your information from. So when you write an essay, you know you have your footnotes, you know you have your references, you know you have your quotes and your stats, and maybe you've got some diagrams, graphs, that sort of thing. That's substantiation. Alternatively, we see that in two different documents that are a production of something like crocheting a bear, and all of that information about how it happened in a separate document. Alternatively, the third one is more of an integrated example. So you might actually have annotations on a product, like you might take a whole bunch of photos of your dance product, and then you might have the video of the dance product, and then you might have a discussion as well. Just to be really clear, it does not matter what you do as long as the total of all of these forms adds up to your word count. So the best outcomes are the ones that identify the intended audience. So that means that you aren't just writing a random paper for no one. You're actually thinking, am I writing to an academic audience? Am I writing for my friends in the school newsletter? Am I trying to actually convince young people to take up this sport? Am I actually trying to present findings to help my peers? Really think about your audience, because your audience is going to change your form and your language. If you are going for an academic report and you're going to present scientific findings in an appropriate way, you need to model that on a scientific report. You need to go talk to Mr. Bartram or Miss Sermon or any of the science teachers, and you need to say, right, how do I present my findings as a scientific report? We want you to adhere to those conventions. On the flip side, you might actually want to present a newsletter article or a magazine article, and you're going to need to go talk to your English teachers, and they're going to have to talk to you about the conventions of this. Or, this is research subject, you should probably do a little mini interview with them. Or you should go and actually read one of them. So go get a magazine. What sort of language do they use? Dolly is not using multisyllabic phrases. Dolly is all YOLO and swag everywhere. So if you write a Dolly article, you're not going to actually write in an academic format. That's totally fine though, because you don't actually need to. If you have identified that your magazine is for a younger audience, then you write for a younger audience and you will not be penalised. So just to recap though, 2,000 words max for year 12s. Okay? If you have some burning additional evidence that needs to be seen to make your topic make sense, not just because you wrote it and you don't know how to cut it out, it goes in your appendix, which does not count. It is not marked, but it is something that the marker can use to understand your topic better. This explicit example I'm thinking of is a student who a few years ago looked at land evictions in a Cambodian territory and the impact these were having on the young people. Now that is a very specific topic, and it was really complicated because most people don't know why these land evictions are occurring or the politics behind it. Her appendix, she wrote a very clear description and discussion of the background issues, and that was not marked. She wrote 2,000 words just for fun, really, and she put that in so that the people who were reading her paper, who did not understand land evictions and thus would not understand her question, could quickly flick back, get a sense of what was going on. She had a nice infographic in there as well that summarized all the key points, and then they could go mark her paper. It was really helpful. You don't need to do that though. If you have a really clear question, what are the benefits of dance? You don't need an appendix that defines dance. Everyone knows what dance is. If you have some particular burning crazy thing that no one else in the school or the moderation or anything is going to know though, you may need to consider adding in a little bit extra on the side. For year 11, sorry guys, you only have 800 words. That means we are short, we are sharp, and we are shiny. Those people who don't want to write though, you have a equivalent minuted system. So 2,000 words equates to 12 minutes. That can be split up, 1,000 words with 6 minutes, okay? Or 3/4 to 1/4, or whatever it is, as long as the total sum comes out together. And that 12 minutes is the same for a video or an oral presentation or a YouTube or whatever, okay?